Welcome to the game design stress test. For this series, I'm doing kind of a hard look at the design of titles. The idea is that we're going to spend at most 15 minutes playing a game, and we're going to break down three key essential areas of design. The playability of a title, how well is the UI, the GUI, how is it handled, the core gameplay loop, what is the primary system of playing, and also what the game is experienced over the long haul, or extrapolating that out. This is not meant to be a review, a spotlight. This is not really a consumer-minded video. This is more of a design exercise to train yourself on how to look at a game and see how a title's design can be broken down into these key aspects. Let me know what you think about this, and enjoy the stress test. Alright, so for our first episode, this is of the roguelike Undermine. Now, keep in mind that the footage you're seeing is, of course, taken during its early access, and most likely will represent, to some extent, what will be the current version of the game. The basics of its core gameplay loop and progression are pretty solidified at this moment. So, for these stress tests, again, we're only playing this for about 15 minutes. In cases of roguelikes, I will purposely take a death to see what the persistent elements offer. So, we're running through the tutorial right now, and from a UI standpoint, you can see the game is making use of all four corners of the screen, or at least for right now, three. The bottom left, in a few minutes, will start to fill up with our buffs. Now, this is done as a form of framing the UI around the player, so that the main screen, again, what you're seeing in the middle of the screen, is not going to be obscured by any elements. Now, for this tutorial, the game is doing a good job of explaining each mechanic in its own singular lesson. We had attack, we had jump, we had bomb, we had throw, and now we're learning about how gold works, and how these lovely little critters here are trying to steal it from me. And again, you want to frame your tutorial like this in order to give the player an all-encompassing view of what the core gameplay is going to be. Now, here's a menu for our kind of index of all the various features, and of course this fills up the more we play. But I'm going to fast forward a little bit briefly to get to the first actual dungeon. So now we're in the game proper, and from playing it, we can tell that this game is most likely making use of handmade rooms that are stitched together. And you can tell that by kind of the arrangement of how things work. From the set nature of having a shop, a treasure room, and various events on each floor, to how the traps are organized. And the reason why I say this is that if this was 100% procedurally generated, anything and everything could happen, the traps could be set up in all manner of weird positions that would not really make sense or not provide any sense of a challenge. It could be like a spinning blade saw, stuck in the bottom left-hand corner. But as we're playing, we found our first captive, and the captives in Undermine are used to unlock new secondary systems. And a key part about Undermine is that it definitely falls more on a roguelite kind of design. And we can see this with the persistent elements that we'll come back to probably near the end of this video. But this is an example of an action roguelike, which we're still trying to come with a catchier name for everything. We are moving around in real time, but we still have the penalty of death restarting our run when we run out of health. And from playing the game in the short run, and again, I've played Undermine before, but I restarted a new file for the stress test, we're starting to see the basics of the core gameplay loop. Explore the mines, get gold, and we're finding these treasures which act as permanent buffs. And as we explore, once again, the core gameplay of a roguelike is built to be very basic in terms of its progression. Again, it has to be, since we're going to be replaying the game again and again. And we're coming to, I guess, the game's first kind of quote-unquote boss fight. And this introduces, again, the dynamic between melee and range. and it's something that the game does, I think, pretty well. And that is melee will always do more damage than a range attack. But melee will do more, but it puts you in greater danger of getting hit. Now this boss here works pretty much as a fixed pattern fight. He's using the same attacks pretty much in sequence here. And it's going to be over probably in the next few seconds. But again, this fight is more or less a test for the player, and it occurs fixed on your first playthrough, kind of as a way of giving the player an explanation as to what bosses they're going to run into, and again, as kind of the final test on the tutorial. Now, right here, you can see how more of the persistent elements of Undermine are going to come together. We picked up these blueprints, which as of this moment, the player doesn't know what they're used for. The same goes for these purple orbs. Now, as we're going to see in a few minutes, they're going to be used for the premium currency. But right here, we've saved another prisoner, and this guy is going to come into play, again, when the persistent element comes in. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm calling this a roguelite in terms of its design. This goes back to one of our design lectures here on the channel. And what I came up with is that to distinguish between a roguelike and a roguelite, that a roguelite typically requires or makes use of a heavy persistent element in order for the player to have any chance at winning. So you cannot really play through the game without doing the persistence side. Whereas in a roguelike, any kind of persistence or long-term progression mainly is there as content reward, not as, the requirement. But as we're moving forward here, this is the floor where we fight the first boss, and I'm pretty sure this is where, when I did this recording, we are going to die. And you can see me kind of messing around. Some of this stuff I'm doing purposely to show it off as a way of testing things. Now, in terms of the design of Undermine, I did notice that, again, you kind of start off in some extent behind the 8 ball. Enemies take a long time to take damage. It's very hard to recover health and resources. And again, a lot of this is built into the progression system itself. And we're going to see that in probably the next 20 seconds or so, as I'm going to fast forward to when the first boss just completely wrecked me. And again, this is an example of kind of these kinds of gates in roguelite design. That they are pretty much subjective based on the player's skills and kind of the luck of the run itself. If, for instance, I had some better items, I probably could have beaten this guy on my first try, which I did actually do that on a stream once. Unfortunately, that didn't happen here. So, with this death, we can talk about the persistent elements of Undermine. Our character dies, all of our resources in terms of gold, or the majority of it, are gotten rid of. You can see here the game is showing us that we have some persistent elements in play. And with these kinds of persistence side of things, the game is built to kind of give you more advantages to help either circumvent or mitigate the difficulty of the game. Like I said a few seconds ago, you can play a roguelite and go pretty far just on basic upgrades if you're good enough at the game. But typically you're going to need something, whether it's a little more damage, a little more health, etc., etc. And you can see here that the game is organizing all your various upgrades into these various equipments that you can buy. And the cost goes up on each successive purchase. And this is a way to reward the player and kind of throw out that hint that you can spread your money around to get more upgrades. Now here we're introduced to what that special currency is used for in the form of unlocking these new items for future runs. And typically roguelikes like to do this kind of progression because it allows them to add depth to a game while making sure that the player is ready to have these crazy or these unique items show up. Binding of Isaac was really well in that regard. But with that, we can I'm going to let the footage kind of re-roll over, and we'll just quickly finish up this stress test. In 15 minutes of playing Undermine, we saw that the UI itself is designed again around a 4-corner structure. Again, this is also used to frame it. We got the action of both melee and range, and we saw the extent of what its progression is going to be. Namely, I'm going to be repeating these dungeons again and again, collecting the gold and the resources I need to upgrade my character so that I can get further in with each play. And again, that progression model has become a very popular aspect of roguelike and roguelite design. I'm going to let the footage kind of go into B-roll here to wrap up the stress test. In terms of faults or issues with the game, I didn't see anything in the first 15 minutes of play, and that is usually my metric as to what I'm going to come back to a game for. If something annoys me in that span of time, I will typically stop playing the game once we're done covering it. But with something like with Undermine and some of the better roguelikes and lights we've played, if that first 15 minutes or if that first run works really well to showcase everything without problems, then I'm going to usually play it over the long haul. And again, within 15 minutes, a player, especially of a roguelike that is built on runs and that kind of progression, is something that you can usually see everything there is in terms of the core gameplay loop. But with that, I think the stress test is going to wrap up here. Like I said, this is kind of our first run of this, and let me know what you think in terms of the format, or if there's anything I should try and change in terms of the framing or structure. Let me know. Thanks for watching, and if people enjoy this, we'll try and do a few more of these in the future. But come back for the latest discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, take care. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel linked down below, where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.